This video isn't for everyone. It's for those who have ever seen beauty where others saw a mistake. The airlock hissed open with a tired wheeze. Dallin Cole stepped off the rust-streaked freighter like a man exiled, dragging a dented duffel bag that thudded softly behind him. The docking bay of Varela Station smelled like scorched metal and poor decisions. Lights flickered above, casting shaky shadows across the cold floor. Silence clung to the place like old dust, too quiet for a station supposedly hosting 47 personnel. He paused. Waited. No greetings. No hustle of engineers or the casual buzz of COMM chatter. Just distant creaks and the occasional sigh of the walls as if the station itself resented being awake. "Welcome to Varela," crackled a voice through the overhead speaker. "Population, nobody who wants to be here?" Dallin squinted up at the intercom. Charming. They'd sent him here after he accidentally rerouted his former captain's bathroom gravity controls. The report said insubordination. He preferred the term strategic protest. Still, Varela was a punishment post. Out of the way. Out of sight. Probably on the verge of falling apart. He shouldered his bag and walked the main corridor, stepping over a detached conduit that sparked weakly, like it had given up asking for help. The walls groaned around him, lights dimming in and out like a station trying to remember how to function. Then he heard it. A hum, high, glassy, delicate. Not mechanical. Not part of any maintenance system he knew. He followed the sound down a side corridor that curved into a narrow observatory dome. And stopped. She was standing there. Alone. A tall silhouette against the stars. Her cloak shimmered with muted hues, nebula dust caught in motion. Silver lavender hair fell in quiet waves over her back, shifting color as the dome's ambient light touched it. And her ears long, asymmetrical, one slightly curled like a broken crescent, the other sweeping back like it remembered flight. She wasn't wearing a uniform. Not human, that much was obvious. And yet, she didn't move. Didn't acknowledge him. Just stared into the stars, arms at her sides, still as the void itself. Dallin blinked, mouth half open. Hey. New guy. Just transferred. And, you're clearly not a vending machine. No response. Right. Smooth. He reached into his duffel and pulled out the least squished thing he had, a synth cheese sandwich, wrapped in faded plastic. He held it out like a peace offering to an ancient deity. "Look, I have no idea what your dietary needs are, but this is marginally edible. Traded half my lunch credits for it, so you know. Historic value." Still, no movement. But she didn't leave. Progress? Dallin stepped forward slowly, keeping his tone light. "You live here or just really committed to the view?" Her head turned. Just slightly. Not fast. Not startled. Measured. Like someone who hadn't decided whether he was worth looking at yet. Her eyes were dark violet at the edges, but deep inside they glowed, faint and distant like dying stars. Dallin swallowed. "You're not gonna vaporize me or something, are you?" A blink. He exhaled. "Okay. Cool. I can work with mysterious silence." Behind him, The walls groaned again. The lights above sputtered, then steadied. He glanced back. When he turned forward, she was closer. He hadn't heard her move. Not even a footstep. She stared at the sandwich in his hand like it had just insulted her ancestors. He chuckled nervously. Yeah, that's fair. This thing probably tastes like regret. Still, she didn't speak. But she didn't retreat, either. Her presence filled the room. Not loud. Not hostile. Just undeniable. Like gravity. Like sorrow. Later, when Dallin asked around, no one had answers. You're imagining things, one text said, not meeting his eyes. Another muttered, don't ask questions. It's safer. And one engineer old, half-blind only whispered, D-class anomaly. Faulted design. Should have been decommissioned. Dallin stopped asking after that. But he couldn't stop thinking. About her. The way she stood still, alien, lost. Not like a monster. Not like a threat. More like someone waiting for a part of herself to return. The next day, he returned to the dome. No sandwich this time. Just himself, a mug of reheated synth coffee, and a question he wasn't sure how to ask. She was there. Same place. Same silence. He approached with a nod. Still not a vending machine. Just confirming. Her eyes shifted toward him. For the first time, she truly looked at him. He held the mug out. No cheese this time. Just bitterness and poor life choices. She tilted her head. Slightly. Then, for the first time, she spoke. Her voice was low. Measured. Like the wind before a storm. Ji kong esta sao, lo ing? Dallin blinked. Then smiled. No, he said softly. But I'm starting to think everyone else does. The lights in the observation dome had steadied, but the air still felt too still. The kind of silence that held questions with no safe answers. Kaiser didn't move. Not at first. She stood facing the starfield like she belonged more out there than in here, like gravity was the only thing keeping her from fading into the void. Dallin leaned against the cold railing beside her. Quiet. Not pushing. Not asking. Just letting the moment unfold. They say I betrayed them, Kaiser said finally. Her voice was almost a whisper. But I never raised a hand. Never spilled blood. He turned his head slightly. Yeah. She nodded once, slow and deliberate. I did nothing but exist. That was enough. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the console. He saw it, just a flicker of tension before she pulled her hand back under the folds of her cloak. They are called the Allery Dominion, she continued. To them, beauty is balance. Symmetry. Every feature measured, every proportion aligned. Any deviation is defect. Dallin gave a small snort. Well. Shit. Good thing I've never been symmetrical on a good day. She looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time, there was something in her eyes beyond distance, something like curiosity. My ears, she said simply, turning her head so both sides were visible. One ear curved inward like a delicate scroll. The other swept back, long and rigid. At birth, they called it a design flaw. Said it was a fault in a genetic pattern. He stared at them for a moment. Then shrugged. Looks fine to me. Kinda elegant, actually. Like you were sketched by an artist who was tired of straight lines. Kaiser's brow furrowed. She didn't answer immediately. They ran tests. Scans. Thought maybe it was a developmental error. Then they noticed other things. Emotional irregularities. Reactivity to music. Empathy spikes. Wait. Dallin frowned. You got kicked out for feeling stuff. They said I was unstable. He rolled his eyes. Yeah. Sounds about right. Gods forbid someone feel things in a sterile society full of cheekbone models. That earned him a sound. Not quite a laugh, but close a soft exhale, the kind that left a trace of warmth in the air. I was 11 when the reassignment order came, she said, quieter now. They didn't call it exile. Just redirection. I was moved to a research colony. Monitored. Studied. Isolated. Dallin rubbed a hand over the back of his neck. That's rough. They kept saying it was for my good. That imperfections led to instability. That eventually, I would understand. He nodded slowly. Yeah. They told me something like that once. After I reprogrammed the gravity in my captain's bathroom. Her head tilted slightly. Why? He smirked. Because he kept treating the junior crew like disposable screws. Figured if he couldn't shit without floating, he might rethink his attitude. Kaiser stared at him. Then, slowly, barely, her lips curved. It wasn't much. Not a grin. Not yet. But it was there. The dome's lights hummed softly. Outside, a small comet streaked by, leaving a brief trail of silver across the void. Dallin followed it with his eyes. I miss it sometimes, she said. He looked at her. The Dominion? No, she shook her head. Before I knew what they expected me to be. When I thought I belonged. Dallin leaned back against the rail. What did it smell like? She blinked. What? Your world. The air. The ground. Childhood stuff. That sort of thing. She closed her eyes, breathing in something that wasn't there anymore. Charged air. Like a storm was always coming. The cities floated on magnetic plates, so the ground hummed under your feet. There were flowers, glass flowers. They bloomed once a year. Sharp edges, but beautiful. You could never pick them without bleeding. Beautiful and dangerous, he murmured. Fits. She opened her eyes. And you? He smiled faintly. Smelled like rust and festival sugar. Sea salt, burnt wiring, fried protein. Also the neighbor's weird perfume tree that made me sneeze every damn spring. She laughed. This time, real. Soft, but real. He blinked, surprised. That's cheating. You're not allowed to have a nice laugh after all that mystery built up. She looked at him, head tilted. You're strange. Yeah. But I'm not symmetrical. So technically, I'm safe from your people. Kayser turned back to the stars, her posture more relaxed now. I used to think, she whispered, that the stars whispered to those who were broken. That they offered places beyond symmetry. Beyond judgment. Dallin sipped from his cup. Maybe that's where we are now. Maybe. They stood in silence. A good silence. Not empty. Just enough. And for the first time since she was cast out, Kayser let herself smile into the dark. The message arrived in a broken pulse. Just a flicker on the terminal in hydroponics. A low-frequency ping that shouldn't have meant anything. But Kayser stopped moving the moment it hit. Her back went rigid. Her long ears twitched once, and the light in her violet eyes dimmed. Dallin was crouched nearby, replacing a cracked nutrient valve. He didn't notice the signal, just the silence that followed. When he looked up, she was staring at the wall like it had said something unforgivable. You okay? He asked. She didn't answer. Not immediately. Repeat transmission, she said quietly. The console obeyed. The same broken code blinked across the screen. Allery military frequency. Encoded. Real. Dallin stood. That looked official. They found me, Kayser said. No emotion in her voice. Just fact. Just gravity. He blinked. Wait, who's they? She turned slowly, the folds of her cloak catching light like oil over metal. The Dominion. They know I'm alive. Dallin muttered a soft curse. How? I don't know. Maybe the station's beacon. Maybe I was careless. Maybe they were always listening. She moved away from the console like it burned. Her fingers curled tight around her sleeve. Hey, Dallin said, stepping in front of her. Breathe. She looked at him. Her composure cracked, just slightly. You don't understand, she said. They won't take me to trial. There's no trial. Just recalibration. His brow furrowed. Like therapy recalibration. No, her voice dropped, dark and low. Memory slicing. Emotional nullification. They reset you until you no longer question the shape they put you in. He stared at her. Jesus. Kayser turned away. Her shoulders were rigid, barely trembling. To them, I'm not broken. I'm defective. That means I can be corrected. Repurposed. Assimilated. Not on my watch. She looked back, eyes narrowing. You think you can stop them? He didn't answer. Not directly. Just walked over to the wall panel, popped it open, and started yanking out cables. What are you doing? She asked. Manual relay override. I'm gonna reroute the station's signature. Scramble our location. Make Varela look like an abandoned mining buoy with a bad attitude. You'll get court-martialed. Wouldn't be the first time. And technically, I was on probation anyway. She blinked, a faint flicker of confusion crossing her features. He didn't stop working. Fingers moved fast, purposeful. Listen, I didn't come out to this rust bucket to die fixing leaky pipes. And I sure as hell didn't come to stand by while someone I care about gets rewritten like a faulty manual. A long silence stretched between them. You care? She asked, barely audible. He glanced at her. You think I sit around talking star metaphors and swiping nutrient packs from the kitchen for just anyone? The ghost of a smile touched her lips. Faint. Fragile. But it was there. He paused, flipped a final switch, and the panel buzzed to life. The beacon pulse shifted a soft electronic sigh like the station had just changed its mind about being found. There, he said. We're ghosts. Kezra exhaled, but it didn't sound relieved. Just quieter. They'll send someone. They always do. Dallin nodded. Let them. Later that night, while the dome lights flickered in lazy patterns overhead, Kezra sat with her knees pulled in, back to the cold railing. Dallin brought 2 mugs of hot synth brew and sat beside her. No words passed for a long while. Then she whispered, I used to dream of silence. Not anymore. Now I know what it really means. He nodded. It's heavier than it looks. The stars drifted silently beyond the dome. The next morning, the warning came in a different voice. Station sensors flickered to red. The alert was subdued, almost embarrassed, as if the system itself knew it was too late. 3 Allery ships dropped into a local orbit. Not sleek scout ships. Not diplomatic cruisers. These were interceptors. Obsidian black. Geometric hulls shaped like razors. No insignia. No lights. Just intent. The docking clamps activated with a hiss like breath held too long. The ground vibrated. Lights dimmed. Systems stalled. Kezra stood by the dome, silent, still. Her face unreadable. Dallin stared at the terminal readouts, then slowly pulled on his patchwork coat. Well, he said. Looks like we've got company. Kezra didn't move. They're not here to talk, are they? He asked. She shook her head. No. He reached for the old plasma wrench on a nearby bench. Held it like a club. Then I guess I'll just have to be extremely unfriendly. She turned, finally meeting his eyes. You'll die if you fight them. He smirked. Hell, I might die anyway. But I'd rather go out ruining their symmetry. Her jaw tightened. You should leave. No. Dallin. You're not going back to them, he said firmly. Not while I'm breathing. They don't get to erase you. The ship groaned again as the boarding tunnel extended. Kezra whispered, almost too soft to hear, thank you. He didn't respond. Just stood beside her. Waiting for the storm to break. The storm didn't knock. The airlock split open with a mechanical scream, and 3 Allery enforcers stepped through the breach like sculpted obsidian statues. Tall. Angular. Faces hidden behind reflective helms shaped into perfect ovals. Armor patterned with fractal symmetry, glowing faint blue with motion tracking nodes. Dallin stood in the center of the corridor, plasma wrench in one hand, and adrenaline pounding in his ears. He glanced sideways. Kazra stepped forward without a word. She removed her cloak. The fabric slid from her shoulders like fog peeling from a blade. Beneath it was armor, silver plates layered with asymmetrical precision, pulsing gently with embedded energy veins. And from her back unfolded two wings. Not feathered. Not solid. But filaments of light, twisting and unbalanced. One longer than the other. Both alive. She stood straight. Tall. The room suddenly too small for what she had become. Dallin couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Kazra's voice was calm. If they fear imperfection, then today, let them face it. The lead Allery raised a compression lance. Aberration 7. Stand down and submit to recalibration. She didn't. She moved. One moment she was still. The next, a blur of light and motion. Her wings sliced the air, scattering faint afterimages. She spun under the lance's arc, struck low, and drove her armored elbow into the enforcer's ribs. His suit sparked and folded inward. The other two reacted fast, moving with synchronized precision. Too precise. Too slow for chaos. Kazra wasn't fighting like a soldier. She was dancing. Her every strike curved where logic would go straight. Every dodge bent just out of rhythm, throwing off their predictive targeting. A ballet of rebellion. Of defiance. Of asymmetry turned into power. One enforcer raised a pulse cannon. Dallin saw the charge build. He hurled a metal crate. It didn't do much. Then he sprinted to the side panel, slapped open the controls, and began overriding the corridor's pressure locks. Don't get fancy, he muttered. Just get unpredictable. Kazra caught a bat and strike with her forearm and used the force to spin upward, kicking the helm off one attacker. The Allery stumbled. She drove a pulse shock into his chest. Dallin finished the override, then ducked just in time to avoid a blast of shrapnel as a ceiling vent exploded behind him. Okay, he gasped. New rule. No more ventilation tricks. One of the Allery advanced toward him. Dallin backed up. Reached behind the workbench. Grabbed the nearest object. A rusted, short-handled plasma welder. Really, he muttered. This again. The enforcer swung. Dallin ducked. Moved in close. And slammed the plasma welder into the side of the helmet with a burst of sparks. The Allery staggered, systems glitching. One more swing and the mask cracked open with a hiss of steam. Kazra landed beside him. She stared down at the fallen soldier. Then at Dallin. You just struck a Dominion Knight, she said, with a tool used to remove panel screws. He shrugged, catching his breath. I call it disruptive artistry. She blinked. Then laughed. A sharp, surprised sound. Wild and alive. Behind them, the last Allery regained footing. Kazra spun and launched a kinetic disc from her gauntlet. It slammed into his chest, throwing him backward through the broken airlock. Dallin grabbed her hand. Come on. This place is about to go to hell. They ran. Through the flickering corridors of Rela Station. Past leaking pipes, blinking terminals, and dead doors. Dallin keyed open a hangar bay door. Inside, a derelict freighter held together by weld patches and spike. Kezra frowned. That thing flies. It argues about it, but yet. They bolted inside. Kezra jumped into the pilot's seat without hesitation. Dallin dropped into the co-pilot's chair, flipping random switches. Engines, she asked. Hopefully. The ship groaned, choked, and then roared awake. Outside, more Alloy were landing. Reinforcements. Heavy armor. Full recalibration squad. Launch now, Dallin barked. Kezra didn't wait. The freighter tore free of the bay just as a compression lance burst through the docking frame. The ship bucked sideways but stayed intact. From space, Varela Station looked like a wounded beast. Then it exploded. The pressure ripple spread outward, catching the rear shield of their freighter. The ship shook violently, alarms screaming, lights flickering. Dallin gritted his teeth. We still flying? Kezra's hands danced across the controls. Barely. But yes. He leaned back. Closed his eyes. Let the adrenaline bleed off. Silence. Except for the hum of broken systems and her steady breathing beside him. After a long pause, he cracked one eye open. Hey, he said. For the record, that was the coolest thing I've ever seen. Kezra didn't look over. But her lips curved just a little. Imperfection, she said softly, has its uses. And for the first time in her life, she didn't whisper it like an apology. She said it like truth. The ship drifted through the silence, half broken, half alive. Lights flickered across the console in uncertain rhythm. The NAV system wheezed when touched. The left thruster coughed every few minutes like it had something to prove and a lot to forget. Dallin Cole sat in the co-pilot's seat, one boot propped up, hands resting behind his head. His jacket was singed. His ribs ached. His knuckles were still bruised from the last swing. Kezra stood at the viewport, wrapped in a faded maintenance blanket, silver lavender hair pulled loosely to one side. Her armor was half removed, fractured, dented, but still clinging to her frame like old loyalty. Neither of them said anything for a while. They'd passed 3 patrol zones without pinging a scanner. Dallin had rerouted the transponder to mimic a garbage hauler from a defunct moon colony. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. The stars rolled past like distant thoughts. Kezra finally spoke. You should sleep. Dallin shrugged. I will when the ship stops sounding like it's having an existential crisis. She almost smiled. Almost. He sat forward, adjusting a loose panel. We're out of rations in 3 days. Water in 5 if we don't reroute the filtration coils. We'll find something. I admire your optimism. She turned from the window, her violet eyes softer now. You don't run from silence the way you used to. He met her gaze. Maybe I found something in it. A pause. Then she stepped closer. The hum of the ship faded beneath her footsteps. Dallin didn't move as she reached out slow, uncertain, and touched his face. Her fingers traced the edge of his cheekbone, down to the scar on his jaw. Gentle. Tentative. Like she was expecting him to flinch. He didn't. Her voice was quiet. No one's ever touched me without fear. His hand rose, slow and deliberate, and mirrored hers. He brushed her hair back behind her ear, the asymmetrical one, the one her people had declared an error. "You're not a mistake," he said. She closed her eyes. Just for a moment. Then opened them again. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you see beauty in something they call broken?" Dallin let out a breath. "Because you exist," he said. "Not the way they want you to, but the way you are. That's what makes it beautiful." Kaiser stared at him like she was seeing something she didn't know how to name. Then she looked away, back to the stars. They passed a debris ring, fragments of a dead station caught in slow orbit around nothing. Dallin adjusted the ship's course. Barely. Just enough to avoid the largest clusters. The silence returned, but now it was easier. Companionable. He handed her the last protein bar without a word. She took it, broke it in half, and handed a piece back. They didn't talk about it. Didn't need to. Time stretched in the way only space allows. Hours bled into each other. Sensors pinged static. Engines rumbled, then purred, then rattled again. Kaiser sat beside him eventually, her blanket pulled around her like a second skin. Her eyes were half closed, but not asleep. "Where do we go now?" she asked. He looked out the viewport. "Anywhere they can reach." She was quiet. "Then, everywhere feels like a place they've touched. Then we find one they haven't." The NAV system beeped faintly. A field of light appeared on the map, uncharted, unclaimed. A sector no one had labeled. Just stars, scattered in a loose spiral, unnamed and drifting. Kaiser leaned forward. "That's not on any Dominion registry." He smiled. "Perfect." They watched the stars grow closer. Outside the viewport, the spiral drifted pale gold and dusky blue, wrapped around a quiet cluster of suns. No gates. No satellites. Just space the way it was before someone claimed it. She stood. He followed. They both moved to the front panel, side by side, watching the stars pass beneath the ship like waves. Kaiser rested a hand on the glass. "Untouched," she said. Dallin nodded. "Still yours if you want it." She glanced at him. "What do we call it?" He didn't hesitate. "Your name." Her eyes widened. Just a little. Then she turned back to the galaxy unfolding in front of them. And smiled. Real. Whole. Like someone who, for the first time, wasn't being watched, but seen.